Janitorial Manager presents the Business of Cleaning podcast, the podcast that brings you the information you need to be successful in the cleaning industry. The Business of Cleaning podcast provides in-depth interviews with successful personalities from the commercial cleaning industry, as well as discussing the trending topics that matter to you and your organization.
Welcome into the Business of Cleaning podcast, your number one source for information on the commercial cleaning industry. We release new episodes monthly, live from the Janitorial Manager studio located in Toledo, Ohio. I'm Tim Clegg, the Marketing Communications Specialist at Janitorial Manager and your host of the Business of Cleaning podcast. Happy New Year's, friends. This month, we are honored and excited to welcome in Stephen Harper, President and CEO of Spectrum Building Services of America. He founded the company back in 2001 after leaving corporate America. And Stephen, I'm so glad. I'm really excited to have you on the show. You and I met at ISSA, and we had a very lengthy conversation. And I've been looking forward to getting the chance to speak with you about your experience and your company.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for having me on. It was completely my honor to meet you and get a chance to talk to you and understand what you guys are doing. I'd seen the podcast before, and I said, man, what a great avenue to be able to, for entrepreneurs to share their journey and to potentially help other folks along the way.
And you have some great ideas, and I can't wait to present them and bring them to daylight for our listeners. Stephen, let's talk about you here first to open the show. You have a very extensive background working for several Fortune 500 companies. I'm going to brag on you a little bit, like Disney, FedEx, Capital One, Boeing, and Gateway, just to name a few. What led you in 2001 to make the decision to leave the corporate America side of things and start in a brand new industry, in the commercial cleaning industry?
You know, honestly, Tim, when I first decided to embark on becoming an entrepreneur, the thing that sort of got me was while I really love being in corporate America, it didn't really allow me the flexibility and creativity to do a lot of the things that I really enjoy doing. Like, while I learned a lot of things about process, about customers, about all the things that you need to do to run a company the right way, there were sometimes it felt a little rigid and confined. And being an entrepreneur, that, and honestly, when one of the jobs I had was I was running a resort for Disney. It was making $115 million a year, and I was making less than 1/10 of that. You know what? Normally, we run a business side. Normally they're making a pretty good chunk of money. So I decided that being an entrepreneur would sort of give me a better path to actually reap some of the reward of the gains that I made for Disney.
How were you able to take skills from all of those stops in the corporate world and take that information and put it all together to start your business?
Tim, I got to tell you, the thing that I am most thankful about is that I did have an opportunity in those companies, because I really developed what I like to call a toolkit. I developed a toolkit that was, developed and honed and enriched by serving in those executive roles at some of those companies. I had the opportunity to really see how things work, to really try some things out. And I felt like that those things could really thrive in an entrepreneurial environment. And so for me, that was like the big aha for me to say, you know what, this is really the path for me. Like, I really wanted to go out and do my own thing. I had met some other entrepreneurs who had done things, and I felt like, well, God, if they could do it, I should be able to do it too,
And certainly one of the skills that is valuable and crucial in all the positions that you have acquired and now as an owner, CEO, is leadership. A leader never stops improving. You never stop learning. You have that thirst for knowledge. How important is this particular skill in the leadership role in owning your own business now, and how do you continue to evolve as a leader with all of your experience?
Tim, it's interesting. I actually grew up in leadership basically at FedEx, where they really meant that you were servicing your team. You were developing processes. You were capitalizing on technology in a very dynamic environment. But in all that, you had to lead. You had to get people to follow you. You had to say, it's not just about what I contribute. It's about what I can lead a team of people to contribute. And again, with the things I learned at FedEx, at Disney, I learned the art of customer delight. How do you really make customers happy? How do you cultivate those valuable, enduring relationships. As you know, Disney has some of the most fanatic fans in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, they do.
And people come back year and year and year again. And I said, you know, the nice thing about janitorial is that if you do a really good job, people will send you checks every month. No one really wants to change that they're a janitorial company. So all you got to do is really find a way to really delight those customers. But the whole thing about being a leader is that you have to really imbue your leadership and your personality into the organization. And I didn't fully realize that in the beginning, but the organization becomes you in a way. It becomes an extension of you, of how you do things. And so if you're not leading, and if you're not providing that direction, if you're not providing that inspiration, if you're not providing the caring about the people that are in the organization, it's never going to go anywhere. But so leadership is everything to me.
You had mentioned in our conversation, there's 3 things that your company balances everything off of: technical competency, integrity, and sustainability. How have these 3 things allowed you to achieve perfect balance in every aspect of your business?
You know, it's an interesting thing. When I talk about how the company becomes you, I mean, we're probably pretty technologically intense and savvy for a janitorial company, especially. And I kind of liken it to when I was at FedEx, where they really, you know, they're a package delivery company, but they had some of the best technology in the world. And so what I found was that by being an expert at sort of what you do, actually, when I talk about those 3 things, those are the 3 differentiators that I think are really are sort of core for us. And because we know our craft, we really learn about the janitorial business. We understand that it's not just about looking and smelling clean. We know it's about asset preservation. We know it's about health and safety. We know it's about all these things. And so we get into the knowledge. You know, as a matter of fact, we've gone through a lot of ISSA training, gone through the ISSA SIM certification process. I mean, all these things that we do because we know that being experts in what you do makes those long-term customers feel like, yeah, they can trust us to know what to do and to give them the right type of advice. Now look at integrity. You know, again, integrity, we have an unwavering commitment that our word has been built around lasting trust. We know that ours is basically a trust industry. And we have to get people to trust us because we're there at night when no one else is there. And they have to know and believe that the people that we have, that the processes that we have in place, that everything that we say that we're going to do, that we in fact do. And, you know, when I first got in the industry, that was the big thing, was that people would promise one thing and get another. And we actually subbed for a company one time. And they said, well, you know, everybody lies until they get in there. You just make it work. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to tell people from the beginning what it takes to do what we need to do. And by God, we're going to stick to it. And because everyone I've hired understands it and they have those same values, and if everyone they hire has those same values, it becomes this whole integrity flywheel where everyone is holding everyone accountable for doing what we said we were going to do. And I tell people all the time, if I'm ever not doing something I said we're going to do, call me out, because it's not intentional. But if we're going to be in integrity, which is that consistency between what you say and what you do, we got to make sure that we're being true to that. And the last thing was sustainability. That one was the thing that for me, I used to think sustainability was really about, you know, green products and chemicals and that kind of stuff and, you know, not really wasting. But I've sort of expanded that to be more than just products and chemicals, but to really be about sustaining our business, sustaining our relationship. So how do you have a sustainable relationship with a customer? You treat them with respect and dignity. You give them fair but honest pricing. You look out for their facilities and the things that are in their best interest. Same thing with our employees. We really know that employee retention is key for us, because if you can keep a janitor, you can keep a customer. I kind of look back, because one of our longest customers, Herman Miller. We've had that customer for 16 years. You know why? We've had the same day porter there for 16 years.
Wow.
And they love her. The company is her to them. And so for us, focusing on employee retention and ensuring that we keep those employees who know that account, who know those customers, who built those relationships. Because then when it comes time where something goes wrong, or we need to have a difficult conversation, it's a whole lot easier because we have that relationship. Not only, like, they don't want to lose that employee that they love. They don't want to lose that person that's there. And the last thing was really about our business practices. We have to have sustainable business practices so that the company can sustain itself. I mean, our company's been around for 21 years, which is a good amount of time, but it needs to go longer. In order to do that, we have to make sure that we're operating in a way that is in accordance with the spirit and intent of the law. And in the spirit of intent with good business practices. And more important, I would say with this, a company has to be profitable. We got to make enough
Yes.
money to sustain the investments that we need to make for the long term. We make investments in technology. We make investments in our people and training. We make investments in our equipment. We make investments in software. We make investments in all these things. All that stuff takes money. And if you're operating on that edge, if you're not building your business and everything you do to be sustainable, you're not going to make it because something's going to fall off the wagon.
I want to go back a little bit to the first steps when you started this company. You had said, well, when you came in the industry, you had success, you grew the company out, but you didn't necessarily have initial visions of having it grow out as much as you have. When did you realize, Stephen, well, you know what? Plans change and I'm going to go ahead and run with this growth, this expansion. When did you kind of decide, well, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and expand this further than what I wanted to.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when I originally looked to start a business, I envisioned a business that would allow me to have more personal and professional balance. Because there was a period of time where I worked 10 years without taking a vacation when I was working in corporate America. It was just crazy. 60, 70-hour work weeks, just all the time. It was just so normal to me. My kids who are adults now, they actually came up to me. They got me a little pig with wings because I said, "Oh yeah, I'll be home in an hour." And they gave me a joke when pigs fly. So there's a little pig with wings.
Oh, no.
Because I was working so much. And so I really wanted to have that personal and professional balance. But the thing that I see now is that in order to have that, I realized that I have to have growth is pivotal for that. Because in order for us to create an exceptional workplace and to honestly fund all the great things we want to do, it can only happen through growth because you have to be able to increase pricing. You have to be able to add new customers. You have to be able to give people career opportunities. You have to be able to give them places to go and things so they don't have to leave you in order to achieve what they want in life. And so what I found was that in order for me to really create an exceptional workplace and to have the level of flexibility that I have, that we have to grow to a certain size and earn a certain amount of money to be able to do that. Because one of the things that I've always done is that I've always said, you know what, I'm always never going to get sucked into working on the company and working 60, 70 hours a week because that's not what I want. But then I realized that my job as the president and CEO is to work on the business, not in the business.
Yes, such an important phrase. Kind of, we find ourselves circling back to that phrase you just mentioned right there.
Yes, and so because of that, I don't want to have a job because I want to always be available to lead my team, to give them what they need, to be looking out for what's around the corner that we don't all see, to be focused on what's the next thing that we got to do in order to be a great company. So that's really my job. Even though, yeah, I could do accounting, I could do finance, I could do operations, I could do all those things. But if I don't have the right people in those positions doing it, and again, you got to pay them. You got to pay the right people because paying the right person is much more cost effective than underpaying the wrong person.
You've been able to focus on that business, and you and I really kind of talked about, and one of the key components of this episode is profit margins. You and I average standard profit margin in 2024, entering the new year, around 4.5%. That to me, that number just makes things seem like they get squeezed a little more tightly. What are some strategies that you've done that you can share with our listeners to help them maybe look to increase that profit margin in the new year and kicking off in the right way?
Tim, I didn't know the industry profit margin was that low when I first got into it. It was, I'll say, a revelation. But we aim for sustainability. So when I started off, I didn't know any better. So I said, I'm going to aim for about 20% profit margin. That felt like a reasonable profit margin to me. It didn't feel excessive, but it felt like enough that I could do the things that I wanted to do and still be able to operate. Because we do a budget every year. And I'm like, okay, in order for us to do this, in order for us to pay raises, in order for us to invest in technology, in order for us to do these things, we need to have X amount of profit in order to be able to actually invest back in to be able to do that. And so our strategy really sort of focused on really kind of, what I'll call these growth engines. I mean, these are engines. One is growth. We have to have the ability to grow the company in a sustainable way. We've grown sort of accidentally. People have found us. We've done a little bit of marketing here and there, but we never really had a thing where we say, okay, we're going to grow 25% a year, every year, year in and year out. And we have the tools, processes, and resources behind it to make that happen. The other thing that we're focusing on is being a talent magnet. And I'm grateful that in the 22 years I've been running Spectrum, 23 years I've been running Spectrum, we've never had a problem recruiting people. That's just never been our issue. We've always had more people want to work for us than we have had to go looking for. We've never
That's a
placed
great problem to have. That is a great problem to have.
We've never placed an ad for a janitor ever. And it really how we execute day in and day out. How do we make sure that we're fulfilling our promises to our customers day in and day out? And then honestly being financially acute about how we do things. Are we doing the things necessary to be profitable? And even more importantly, are we collecting that money that we make in profit? Because you know what? Profit doesn't pay bills. Cash pays bills.
Cash is still king.
Really focus on those things.
And one of the things I found so fascinating with our initial meeting back in ISSA in November was you put the phrase, we were cool. We were remote before it was cool and took off. All of your employees are remote, except I believe one is what our conversation led to.
Yeah. It's interesting. You know, the way it started was that I had an employee who had been with me for 6, 7 years, and she had a situation where she had to move because her husband's job moved to Nevada. And I was pretty sad, but I was like, okay, well, you do what you got to do. You know, I'm always happy, people move on and do their own thing. But, and so she helped out for a while we were looking for a new person to transition her role. And as it turns out, she was able to do her job successfully because technology is evolving such a way that you can do that. And so she worked remotely from Nevada. And this went on for several years, actually. And then COVID hit. And then we needed everyone to work remotely. Because we couldn't bring people into an office. And so we let people go remote. And about a couple of months in, I said, this is the future. People need this flexibility, especially like I have employees that have young children. I have employees that have families with health situations. I have employees that have different things. And you know what? Giving them the ability to work remotely and flexibly has made them more engaged as employees. Like I kind of joke because I give everyone, they can work remotely and they have unlimited paid time off. So they have the complete flexibility to manage their schedule. The only thing I ask is that the things that need to be done for the company to be sustainable, because you all know what it is, that you're doing your part to contribute. And we have metrics that we measure to have accountability for those things on a weekly basis. So this has been one of the big things. Like I had one employee, I kid you not, she does our payroll stuff for us. And she did payroll the day she delivered her baby because she wanted to make sure she got it done.
Oh my gosh.
Anyone else could say, hey, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to do this because she was already home anyway, but she's so committed to doing her job and taking care of the company because the company takes care of her. We try to create this environment of caring. I care about them. I care about what's important for them in their lives. They care about the company. And then we all care about each other. And this whole environment of care really encourages people to really do their best at sort of what they're doing. And when necessary, to pitch in ways that would be, a little bit different at times.
Stephen, I've had a remarkable, I've only known you in a short time, a few months, but in our conversations, the examples, like you just gave, not working, I'm not taking a vacation, for 10 years, and then those kind of understanding. You're a very empathetic person towards your employees, and that's probably a reason why they're so comfortable with doing those things is because you do take the time to understand. Would you think that that's a rate that's one of your highest and best qualities is your overall empathy towards your employees?
I wish I was more empathetic, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that I have a level of empathy that comes from having been there, certainly for sure. And And when I started Spectrum, one of my things was I said I wanted to create a company that I would want to work for myself. And so I said, if I were for a company, what would I want them? I would want them to pay me an above market pay. I would want them to give me regular salary increases. I would want them to give me an opportunity to earn bonuses based on how I'm contributing. I would want, benefits. I want flexibility. Like I thought about all the things that I would want. And I said, this is what I created. And this is what it was intentional in a way. And it wasn't born out of empathy, but I'm glad that it feels very empathetic
Yeah.
because like I said, I do have employees who have young kids, and the fact they're able to be home with their young kids while they're working, to me, that's a huge plus.
More so than ever. And I definitely respect and appreciate that.
Because I can imagine them having to pay for daycare, while their kids, I mean, daycare is expensive.
Average cost in about 3 years, they say, is going to be projected at $40,000.
It's crazy.
We're talking with Stephen Harper, President CEO of Spectrum Building Services of America since 2001 when they started. Your company's finishing up going through a rebranding process to carry into 2024.
Yeah.
What objectives were you guys hoping to accomplish with the rebrand, and what decisions lead a company towards a rebrand?
Well, ours was really, I say rebrand, but we really didn't have a brand before. This was really our branding effort. And it started out of the thing as I was going through and learning, okay, we had to create a growth machine, we had to create marketing. And I said, okay, well, how do we get customers? What kind of customers do we want? You start going through, asking all these questions. And then as part of that process, I was exposed to a video by Simon Sinek, and it was about understanding your why. And really, companies don't buy from someone because they do a good job. They buy for them because they buy into why they're doing what they're doing. And so we had to really figure out what our why was. And last year, I was actually involved in a program with Salesforce. It was an entrepreneurship mentoring program. And they gave me access to some of the best minds at Salesforce, some creative forces, some marketing forces, sales forces. And the really great thing was that we actually were able to develop a mission, beyond just making money, and because it would allow us to attract the right customers. Because without people knowing what you're about, why do they choose you over any of the other 100 guys out there with a mop and a bucket that claims they clean good out there? I mean, how do they do that? And so, building that whole process, it allowed us to articulate our mission and to be able to attract the right customers through digital marketing and account-based marketing. And, we've learned to identify customers who share our values. Like our mission is clear now. We say our mission is to be caretakers and stewards and restoring and enriching spaces so businesses can thrive. And the thing is, it sounds like, oh, wow, what a thing. But really is we do seek partnerships with those who value their facilities as much as we do. I actually had to, terminate a relationship with a customer because they just didn't care about their facilities. And as much as we tried to tell them, look, you need to do this in order to take care of this. You need to, they were just so intent on pitching pains. It was just maddening. It was in a way embarrassing, but it was a way real. I was actually in a meeting with them, and I started tearing up as I was talking to them, and I realized, wait a minute, I care more than they do.
Oh, man. I want to continue to talk about branding, but this is a very interesting topic that I want to circle back to. When you were going through, as you guys finished up that process here, of a brand, solidifying that, what you want to be,
right?
How during that process, how vital was it before starting it to have everything in a detailed, organized fashion laid out in front of you, so that way there wasn't something that was overlooked or not discussed when you guys became committed to that?
Well, the thing is that we really looked at it as a process. And so we laid out the process that we were going through and the objectives that we want to accomplish, more so than the specific detailed steps of everything. But we had the right resources. We took our time. And like I said, we just really asked ourselves questions like, what are we really good at? What are we not good at? And it's that willingness to be honest and vulnerable about what your capabilities are, and so what you're not, just so we can do that deep dive. Branding work is it's a different kind of work than I'm used to doing. I mean, I'm used to doing analytical work, financial modeling, engineering, analytics stuff, and then to really talk about, okay, what do you feel? What do you believe? And that's where those three core values I came from in terms of a technical excellence, integrity, and sustainability, because those are the things that we're just really good at. I mean, we're at our best when we're focusing on those things. And so, what, we got to make sure that we're finding customers that actually value that as well, because then our haggling is not about price and about this. It's about, we know we want to work together because we're in alignment.
Thought it was really fascinating what you just said, having those tough conversations, because everybody doesn't feel sometimes comfortable discussing. There are some problems. There are some things we can improve. But if there's nothing to improve in my job or your job, then we should all just retire, right? Right now, right now. So how difficult was that? It might not have even been difficult at all because some people sometimes may not respond to that criticism or the things you aren't doing so well at, then other people might. But coming together as a team, what was that process like, going through that together with your team?
Well, the interesting thing that our team is used to that sort of process. We've always, from the beginning of the company, had an annual planning process where we would go through and do a SWOT analysis, where we do the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so we were sort of used to that. And again, I think I've cultivated enough equity with our team over the years that they know that I am above all things committed to the truth, and that while I love to hear good news, I have to hear bad news. It is such a part of our culture that really nobody holds back when it comes to things that we don't do well.
Right.
And at the same time, if anything, I think they're probably over glamorizing things that we do well, even though I believe we do them well. Like, don't get me wrong, but to them, they're so shocked because they've all worked in this industry for years, and they came here, and the reason that they've stayed here, most of them for over a decade, is because it's different. It's different here. I've had one employee who worked for me for 5 years, left for 2 years, and he's been back now for 8 years. So he's worked with me for a total of 13 of the last 15 years. But he says, I went out there, I wanted to explore something, and I saw that, what? It's not like this. And so trying to create a work environment that attracts people who thrive on excellence and growth and professional pride and caring, finding those people, that's the key. And that's why even when we hire people, we recruit for values. We don't recruit for skills. I mean, we can teach anybody the skills. This is it's not a complicated industry, but the values, that's huge.
And that's a conversation having with guests that kind of is a reoccurring theme, is what you just said right there. We want to get to know somebody when we're going through that interviewing, that recruiting process. We want to get to know who they are as a person, so that way we know that they line up with our values, our agendas. We can train them. So why do you think in 2024, because it's still a huge problem industry-wide, that more people don't feel comfortable or just don't take that approach in general? What do you think that is?
It's harder and it takes longer because it's easier to look at a resume and see skills and say, okay, this person has all the skills to, let's bring them in. As long as they don't blow up, we'll hire them.
Right.
But our goals, we do what they call a behaviorally anchored interview. And we talk to them about things they've done in the past to show attributes that we're looking for. And so our goal is to understand how they problem solve. How do they react to adversity? How do they work together as a team? What happens when things don't go wrong? It really is about getting to know them as a person. And even during the interview process, I always tell people, I'm just taking notes the whole time. I'm writing down everything you say, and I don't do most of it. I let them do 99% of the talking. I just ask a question, sit back, and just write down what they tell me, because people will reveal themselves to you if you ask them the right question. They will reveal themselves. And that's what I want. I want them to reveal themselves, to be honest, because to be honest with you, if they don't fit our values, I'm so anal about it that they won't survive anyway. I mean, they won't. And we've had instances where people sort of faked their way through the interview and they gave the answers that seemingly were close enough and people liked them, that kind of stuff. But the reality is, once you get here, it's like, y'all meant that? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. He's like, and one of the biggest ones is that we tell all of our frontline managers, you work for the employees, they don't work for you. Your job is to give them whatever they need in terms of resources, time, energy, equipment, training, whatever, to be successful at their job. Because if they're not successful, especially if enough of them are successful, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the manager. I'm not looking at the employees.
Going back to that process, being so in depth, have you found in your own personal style when you are recruiting and hiring that getting to know a person, that you may have more success with somebody who, like you said, we can train them, that might come from another industry with necessarily not a commercial cleaning background versus somebody, okay, he said 2 years here, a year here, and a year there. What is that process like, and what is the success for those people who are transitioning into a new career path?
It's interesting. If I look at my leadership team, about half of them came from the cleaning industry and the other half did not come from the cleaning industry. And I've seen equal levels of success along the way. So to me, that sort of validates in my mind that it isn't about experiencing the industry, although this isn't to say that experiencing the industry is irrelevant. It just means that it's not everything. And so what we did was we put together a training program along with playbooks and all this stuff so that people can learn how we do things. But the more important thing is to learn how we do things, because we have it documented well enough so that you can follow along and do it if you just do the steps. And we have a mentor who works with you to help you learn those steps along the way. So again, while I think that having industry experience has some merit to it and attracts a certain type of person, so I'm not surprised that the half that actually did come from the industry, but it's not everything. It really is not.
50%. That's a lot higher of a number than I thought, which is a great thing.
I didn't come from the industry, so
right, exactly. Knowing your worth in your contracts is something that all commercial cleaning businesses have to know and understand. And you talked about it, just scratch the surface. A lot of companies are necessarily not comfortable about talking about this next subject. Not all contracts are going to be, as you documented, the best for your business. Being able to bring in the right customer and saying no to somebody that might be the wrong customer. You shared one example, but what are some strategies that you imply that you could share other listeners or businesses that to employ this identity and potentially finding out those problematic contracts before entering into those agreements, because they think, well, you know what? It's a pretty enticing contract, but here's a red flag. Here's a red flag.
It's funny. Customers actually tell you the red flags. It's actually pretty amazing. Like one of the first questions we ask is, how long have you been with your last company, and why are you changing companies? Anyone that's had more than 2 or 3 cleaning companies in the last 5 years, that's a red flag. That is a red flag for me.
Would you be willing to take on that contract then, if it was 2 or 3 in 5 years?
If they had
turnover,
if they had a really good explanation for it, then yeah. But if it was just, they never did this or never did that, because the red flags cause us to dig deeper. It doesn't cause us to walk away necessarily. So we say, oh, well, why do you think they didn't do what they were supposed to do? What was the specification? What was the budget? What are your expectations? And really sort of looking at that whole thing holistically. If they have unreasonable expectations, then we can help educate them. But my favorite story was the one that was a chain of grocery stores. They had like 50 stores, and they wanted us to come in and clean them. And so they called us, and we asked them why they said, oh no, we love our current company. I'm like, well, why are you getting rid of them? They said, well, because they wanted to raise the price to account for minimum wage. And I'm like, red flag.
Oh man. And being that open and upfront about it too. Yeah. I mean, good Lord. Why do we think that is, that some companies are fearful of going through that process? Some people may, well, my company may not be in a position to say no, so we have to accept a contract that may have a red flag or two underneath of it.
I've been there. So let me just first say that I have taken customers that at the beginning, and this was a while back to be fair, but I said where they weren't really the right fit. I knew it wasn't going to be a great deal, but I needed to get some more money coming in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality that I found is that it takes so much work and time and energy from your management team, your team, whatever, from your employees. You lose goodwill with the employees because you put them in difficult positions with customers where they can't really be successful. That again, it puts you in such a position that you can't be true to who you are. And it ends up not being a sustainable situation. And so what I've come to realize is that getting customers who are more aligned with who you are and how you do things makes it easier to run your business. Because I can tell you, our business is 50% bigger than what it was um, uh, 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
And I mean, no, yeah, somewhere in that range. And the reality is that we have the same overhead that we had then. Same amount of management, same amount of office staff. And so, the ability to be more efficient with customers and to service those customers more cost effectively is what helps us to have the profit margin that we have without relying solely on a higher price. Because you can't always rely on a higher price. I mean, you have to
Right.
be competitive within the marketplace. But if you can reduce your costs in a way that makes sense through technology or through the way you deal with things or the way you do stuff, and some customers just don't fit well into that. So you got to really identify that up front and say, I said this joke in the beginning. I said, you can be cheap or you can be a pain in the ass, but you can't be both.
Right.
because, because, like if you're paying yes, but you're paying a lot of money, well, we can try to figure a way to work around it. But if you're easy, okay, maybe. But if you're both, yeah, that's the best. But I've expanded that to a little bit more holistic list. But that was my initial list.
Stephen, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, especially after the holidays, to come on the show to discuss so many valuable and important topics and trends in the commercial cleaning industry. How can people find you guys on social media? You guys do have a brand new, beautiful website, by the way.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, we're in the process as you speak right now. And again, I'm always full open coming with people. We're actually, as part of our rebranding, we're actually redoing our website to optimize it better for digital marketing. We've learned some things and figured out how we can do some better. We're starting to put up content about the services that we offer, about our company, about how we do this. So people, when they come to our website, they can understand who we are. It's not just text. It is actually videos. And we actually shot a video at actually one of our customers' actually several of our customers' locations, because we want to make sure that we're doing a great job of presenting that. So they can find us at spectrumbsa.com, but we're actually relaunching a LinkedIn page. We're redoing a Facebook page, Instagram. So those things will all be there, and we'll have links to those on our website. But if someone wants to start there, they can do that. If they want to reach out to me, personally, my email, that's fine as well. I'm always glad to help and support other entrepreneurs, other people in the industry that are where I was, because I wish someone had been there to help me when I was at that stage. So that's really why I came on today, because I said, what, if I can be of service, if I can help other people, not make the mistakes I made, make some different ones. Let me avoid these, or to share some insight that might, accelerate their growth. I'm always happy to do that.
Pay it forward mentality. Absolutely love it. One more thing, friend.
Sure.
Go Bruins.
Yes!
UCLA graduate. That's one thing you and I was so excited to share.
Yes.
Living in the East Coast, being a huge UCLA fan, I wanted to share that moment with you.
And for those who don't know, I actually went to UCLA for graduate school, so I'm a big Bruin fan. I always joke that the 2 times that they won national championships recently, I was on campus. So
Well, you
I,
better
so
go
I,
there. You better go quick because they got
I
a
better go
young team,
back.
very young team that's trying to grow in time for March. But Stephen, certainly appreciate you coming on the show, and we can't wait to stay in touch with you. And we're excited about your company's rebrand and launch of all the socials and the website. That will conclude this month's episode of the Business of Cleaning podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, be sure to leave us a 5-star review with your comments. From everyone at Janitorial Manager, our guest, Stephen Harper, I'm Tim Clagg saying so long until next time.